Welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. Hey, you guys, welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. I'm super duper excited to be here, and I'm just going to give you a little I'm giving you a little warning that I'm coming in. I'm coming in with this maybe a touch of masshole attitude. All right, I got to get it together. Okay, so first of all, let me say this. If you're new to the show, welcome. I'm so excited because one of my old friends from California, Joseph, who I call Hoggy, he told me that his sister Melody just started listening to the show, and it's so crazy to me. Like when my friends actually sit down and watch, like, this is also on the YouTubes. And I just think it's such a trip. It literally blows my mind when my friends were like, I listened to your podcast. I love the episode. I'm like, you actually listen? Like you listen, you watch it? So look at new people. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Loyal listeners, you know how much I love you. And I love that we get to spend a little time together. So thank you for being here as well. Okay, this episode, I have no idea what I'm calling this thing. I will know probably by the time I'm done, but I kind of have a funny name in mind, but I don't know if it'll make sense to anybody until they actually listen. But so I'm going to set up this story, this situation, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what happened, and then I'm going to tell you how I feel about it, some thoughts about it. And remember, everything I say, even if I'm telling a personal story, there is a universal aspect to the personal, right? So everything that I share, I shouldn't say everything, but I highly believe, gotta find my words. I highly believe that with most stories, we can find something that we relate to. And if we're really paying attention and just kind of broaden out a little bit, we'll find some things, some little nuggets that will be applicable and helpful to us. But I'm going to just share. I'm sharing for a couple of reasons. I'm going to share this story because on one level, I just like, there are certain things that I will like put up with and tolerate. And then there comes a time when I say, okay, enough is enough. Enough is enough. And we are going to address this. But I'm not just addressing it for me. I'm kind of addressing it for solopreneurs and yoga teachers and people who trade hours sometimes for time, hours for time. That's how they make their money. So just stay with me. Just buckle up for safety, because I am kind of letting Vikki with 2Ks from Lawrence. One of my favorite parts of me. I'm kind of giving her the mic a little bit. Because I think it's important. Okay, let me set the scene. Let me set the scenario. Here's what happened. So I did a post the other day. So some of you may know, and if you don't know, right, I have been a yoga teacher since like 1999. I got my certification in like 2001, but I fell in love with yoga. I was introduced to yoga when I was like 19 years old, running the weight room at Boston University. And there's a whole story. I think it might be even in my origin story or something like that. Like episode 1, I might even mention this. But I go way back, my relationship with yoga. So I have been a student of yoga for a wicked long time. I've been a teacher for like 24 years. I don't know, almost 25 years. It's been a long time. But anyways, here's my point. So yoga and I have a long-standing relationship. You know who I don't have a long-standing relationship with? This broad who doesn't know me and decided to comment on my Facebook post. So this is the story aspect. So I did a post the other day. Again, for those of you who don't know me, been a yoga teacher for a wicked long time. I had a studio. So in the beginning, for those of you who don't know what it's like to be a yoga teacher, right? Usually in the beginning, you first, learn how to teach. You are doing hopefully, fingers crossed, you're doing some continuing education. But the way you get better is by teaching, right? By practicing, by teaching, and by being a lifelong learner and being a student, right? And all these things go hand in hand. Okay. But a lot of times when you first start out, most people don't just start out and like, boom, open a studio. Most people have to schlep their ass all over their state, all over their city, right? So you're teaching at a gym, and then you're teaching at some studio, and then you're doing some privates, and you're driving all over God's creation, just trying to make a buck so you can feed yourself and keep a roof over your head, right? So it's not an easy gig. And yoga teachers, by and large, often do not get paid well, right? Probably around 25 bucks, 35 bucks a class, whatever it is. And I have so many thoughts about the yoga industry that we don't have time for. I'm going to try to stay on point, but I want to make my point. So a lot of people start off there, but then eventually, right? Some of us are like, I'm done schlepping myself all over this place. I'm going to open my own studio. And that's what I did. For a few years, I drove around all over the place. And then I was like, yeah, no, enough of this, right? For like 2 years, I think I did it. So I opened my first studio in 2003, and I had a studio, a brick and mortar space for like 10 years. And then I stopped, having a studio. I let it go. Lots of reasons why. I was kind of transitioning away from that being my full-time gig, and I was stepping into, I'm a certified spiritual mentor. So I was starting to do that and shift my focus, but I still taught a few yoga classes. Okay. And then gradually over time, I went down to one yoga class a week, and then I stopped teaching weekly classes. I would still teach at my retreats. I would still teach in people's YTTs. I would still do workshops, so I was still keeping my chops up and I was still using it, but not weekly. Okay. So at the beginning of 2024, I decided to go back to teaching like a weekly class. Okay. Now here's the thing. I love teaching this class. I love my students. I love the people who come. They have been with me for a wicked long time. And so that's just the setup, okay, for like where this why I feel the need to respond to this. It's not so much about this person because I don't know them. It's more about the attitude and the mindset. And that's what I'm pushing back against. And that's what I really want to speak to. Okay, so I do a post, and it's literally like the picture of the space that I teach in. It's a lovely space. And I basically just say like, here's the class, right? It's running for 8 weeks. So 8 classes from this date to this date, it's 160. So it's 20 bucks a class. And if you want to drop in, it's $25 a class. Okay. There's a bunch of different reasons why drop-in classes are more expensive than if somebody commits up front. It's just good business amongst other things. There's incentive, there's reason, it makes sense. No other yoga teacher would bat an eye at like why a drop-in class would be more expensive than say like the regular classes. Okay. So some of the comments are like what my friend Tom writes, beam me up, Scotty. He's like, I want to be there, right? My best friend KT is like, oh my God, people are so lucky, all this stuff. But then there's this one lady, and this was the comment. Are you serving appetizers? $25 drop in, and then the emoji like with the big eyes, and then LOL. Okay. Are you serving appetizers? $25 drop in, big eye emoji, LOL. Okay, so I see this. Now look, in A Course in Miracles, there's a line that says, your ego speaks first and it speaks loudest, okay? So I am really aware that when Vikki with 2Ks, because what people sometimes don't realize is they think that, oh, you're a spiritual mentor, or, oh, like this person or that person or this person or whatever, they're so spiritual or blah, 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 blah. Yes, and I am also a human being. I am also a human being who was raised in Lawrence in Boston, Mass. Let me tell you, my first thought is not, oh, let's just be compassionate. Like, oh, I don't know if this woman had a tough day, right? No, my first instinct and reaction is not to be like wicked nice back. So of course I read that, and like the first thing, the things I hear in my head, the first things I hear Vikki saying in my head, I'm like, okay. And they make me laugh, and I'm like, not going to say that, not going to share that, right? But I definitely have, and so I wait a beat, because remember, the ego speaks first and it speaks loudest. And I often add, and it's always wrong, or it's always going to get you into trouble. Woo! So I'm like, okay, let's just take a beat. And I took a beat. but I do have some responses. And I think I want to share this because it's going to touch on a bunch of things. You don't have to be a yoga teacher to relate to this story. I think this is just human behavior these days. I think people think that everybody gives a shit about their opinion. Note to self, people, we do not. If I am not speaking to you, if you are not my friends, my family, my clients, potential customers, or whatever, you can just keep scrolling. You don't have to stop and give me your opinion. You don't have to do it on other people's stuff too. Let me tell you, as a vegan, right? I've been vegan for over 20 years. Do you know how much commenting I don't do on people's posts when I see them holding up dead fish that they got hooked through the face, and their dead deers and their lobster dinners that I know that poor animal was boiled alive for your taste buds, right? Like, do you know how much I shut the fuck up when I have opinions about everything? Do you know how many times I just scroll on by people's things and just say, like, hey, right? Hey, I just not now look, there are going to be instances where if I really felt like if somebody was saying something really terrible or hateful or racist or homophobic, like I will get involved. I'm that kid. I have that big mouth. I will say like, hey, 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 right? But so much, I just like zip it, zip it up, zip it up. Your comment is not needed here, right? It is just not needed here. So I just like, go like, okay, like whatever. So I find it fascinating when people feel the need to leave their little smart aleck comments. Now, here's the points that I want to make. And maybe you can take away something from this that you can either start applying, or you're going to recognize some things that have maybe that you've experienced, like you've been on the receiving end of this too. You might also recognize like, ooh, I've done this a few times. Like maybe I should rethink like how I'm approaching things. Number one, though, I got like 8 points here to make about this. Number one, I don't know you, random stranger lady. We have like a couple of friends in common, but I don't know you, right? We're not friends on social media, and we're not friends in real life. So I don't even know how you saw my post, number one, but I don't know you, number one. Number two, more importantly, you don't know me. You don't know me. You don't know my experience as a yoga teacher. You don't know my education. You don't know my quote unquote expertise, although I don't consider myself an expert in anything really. I mean, I might know some things. I have a lot of years. I have a lot of training. I have a lot of education, but I hesitate to, when people are like, oh, they're teaching a master class. I'm like, I'm not a master of much of anything except being myself. Being myself, I'm really good at. But here's the thing. You don't know me. You don't know who I am. You don't know what my skill set is. You don't know how long I've been teaching. You just try to lump me into some idea that you have of local New Hampshire yoga teacher or whatever the fuck. I don't know. But I'm like, I don't know you, but more importantly, you don't know me. You might want to go do some homework before you open up your big mouth. You might be like, oh, this person had a TV show, a yoga TV show for 13 years. Oh my God, this person's been teaching for 25 years, like da 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 da. So that's number two. Number three, you have never been in one of my classes. You don't know if my classes are worth it. You don't know what my classes entail. You are trying, and people do this. I talked about this like maybe 2 episodes ago. Remember, Stop Building Cages. And that poem by Hafiz, the small man builds cages for everyone he knows, right? While the sage who has to duck his head when the moon is low, right? Spends all night long dropping keys for the beautiful rowdy prisoners, right? I'm doing that from my head, so I think I got it mostly right. So it's like, don't put me in a box of what you think a yoga teacher, first of all, like should charge, should be, should whatever. You've never been to my class. You don't know that in every single one of my classes, at the end of my class, every person gets an arm and like head massage. You don't know the level of my instruction and how I teach and how I break things down and how I modify and like you know nothing about me. but you thought you knew enough that you could go onto a random stranger's page. Now, look, there is a low-level chance that this person came to one of my classes a gazillion years ago. I don't recognize their name, their face, whatever. But I just think it's fascinating that a person will go on and make that kind of comment. And it's not even, it wasn't like it was super offensive to me. What bothers me about it is the very small-minded mindset, which I'm going to get to in a second. Okay. The other thing that bothers me is that if you see a post like that of somebody who is promoting something that they do, and you don't know them and you don't have any experience with them and you don't know what you're talking about, you might want to just zip it, right? And also, when I went to this person's, because I was kind of like, oh, do I know them? And when I went to their profile, their number one thing that, because you know how you can describe yourself. And some people might say entrepreneur, mom of three, like gardener, like whatever they do. Well, their very first thing is like yoga, prayer emoji, prayer hands, yoga, prayer hands. Like it's their first thing. And I thought to myself, well, somebody hasn't been paying attention in class, or maybe your teachers haven't been teaching you about what yoga is. And the very first premise of yoga, right, in the yamas, number one is ahimsa, is nonviolence in thought, word, and action, indeed, right? Compassion, non-harm. So clearly somebody was not practicing in that moment. Clearly this person just thought, oh, whatever, I'm going to go make a comment like murmur, 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 murmur. Okay. So like, again, I'm not trying to personally attack this person. I'm only going off of what I have to respond to. Again, I want to keep making this clear. What I'm mostly pointing to is this small mentality, which I'm going to make my point right now. Sometimes people feel threatened by other people's bigness or other people's confidence or other people's ability to charge more than them or to whatever that like it's just like, well, it's almost like $25 drop in big eye emoji is almost like somebody with their, like I'm doing this action where I'm like jamming my fists into my hips. Like, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are charging $25 for a drop in? Right? Like, are you going to serve appetizers? Like, because I better be getting more for my money than just a class. If you're going to, who do you think you are? Right? I'm like, okay, first of all, if you're getting threatened or upset, and I see other yoga teachers do this to other yoga teachers all the time online, making snide little comments about their pricing and how they think that, so the people who are complaining, they think the other teachers should be charging more appropriately, or like, oh my God, how can you charge so much? I'm like, sweetheart, let me tell you something. That says way less about my price and has way more to do with how you think. It's not on me and it's not my problem because people happily pay me that amount. You know why? Because the people who do think or know that I'm worth it. And those who don't, they don't have to come to class. They don't have to sign up or pay it. But they're certainly not writing to me telling me that they're not coming to my classes because they think $25 is too much. Okay. The next thing I want to say is this. Yoga is mostly a woman majority field, right? Often women owned, women taught, women students. Why would a fellow woman not want another woman to make good money and to earn good money and to get paid? We can't ever get paid what we're quote unquote worth, because what we are worth is priceless. Who we are as an extension of the divine, as one of God's kids, there is not a money number that could ever match that. Who you are as a human being and your worth, it is priceless. But we live here in the illusion of time and space and capitalism, and we have businesses and we gotta either barter or like put money, put numbers and symbol. Like money is just, have you ever thought about how ridiculous money is on some level? It's just pieces of paper. It's just like coins, right? That we've decided these things have value. But that's how it works here. So this is what we get to work with. I have to pick a number and say, this is what I charge, right? So who are you? Who are you to go and try to tell another person, like, oh, I can't believe you charge so much money, right? Like I just saw this too with Sarah Blakely. You guys know who Sarah Blakely is? She's a creator of Spanx. And I'm in a program with her husband, Jesse Itzla. And Sarah just created, right? So Spanx is this humongous company that she started with like $5,000, a pair of pantyhose with the legs cut off, and a fucking dream. And she went out there and I mean, I'm not a big fan of like quote unquote hustle culture, the way it gets delivered to us. But man, do I love a person who's not afraid to work hard and follow their dream and have the guts to go after a thing, right? So she built this empire, right, of women's like clothing support articles, whatever. So she recently just launched a new thing, and they're called Sneaks, Sneex. And she basically has created the first like comfortable heel, like, right, a heel for women that she took into account. It took her so many years to do this, right? People have no idea the amount of travel, design, sweat, tears, like everything that she did. So they're like high heel shoes that look like sneakers, and they're wicked cool. Like I'm not even a heels person, right? At all, but I would buy a pair of those. I was like, these things are badass. They look good. Everybody who's tried them on say they feel fantastic. But here's my point. They're a high-end item. I want to say those suckers start at like either 250 or 350, and then they go up to like 575. And people were bitching and moaning in the comment section on her day where she's so happy and announcing this thing. And people are like, oh my God, how about making a shoe that the rest of us can afford? Like, right? And I'm like, oh my God, people, you have no idea. I mean, I hope she comes out with a vegan one. I should check. That's my biggest thing is like, I don't wear leather or suede or any of that. I don't think there are any vegan options. So I'm not going to get a pair. And I don't need high heel shoes, but I would love to try a pair on just to see what they're like. But I appreciate her hard work, her innovation, her creativity, the way that she treats her employees and her team members like so well. Like, I'm like, you guys have no idea the level of generosity that this woman shows, what she has put into this. But people want to do their little snarky comments. People want to do their poor me. I can't, you know what I'm saying? And look, I get it. But not all, like, I'm probably never going to have a Mercedes-Benz in this lifetime. I don't want one, but what if I did, right? There's just certain things that cost more money than others. And sometimes you get what you pay for. Not always. Not always, because trust me, I've invested in some things with some people, and I was like, that is not a good ROI return, right, on my investment. But anyways, here's my point. Why wouldn't we want to support other women who are trying to like create stuff and like do stuff, especially in yoga, where the teachers are notoriously often paid so terribly and low, right? And so it kind of brings me to my next point, which is this. As long as I've been teaching, I want to say that I have almost always been in my area one of the most, I don't want to use the word expensive, but like I have charged probably the most for my classes. When I had a studio, when I first started out, I did what everybody else did. I took a look around. I looked what other people were charging. And I was trying to like look at the market and say like, okay, well, this is what people are used to paying. So, and then eventually I was like, screw this. Like, no, I know what I'm bringing to the table. I know that how much that I study and go to classes and keep my education up and apply and make mistakes and learn and try to do it, like all this stuff. And I was like, no. I've put in thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of learning. I mean, over 10,000 hours of teaching, right? I mean, all the money I've paid for classes and trainings and workshops and retreats that I've been to, or, you know, I'm like all of it. So here's my point. The cost of living has gone up, hasn't it? Hasn't the cost of living gone up since 1999? Why? And I'm just going to say it straight. So if there's little ears around, you might want to block them for a second. But why the fuck do people expect yoga teachers to keeping their classes the same rate of pay that we have been for the last 15, 20, 10, 20, whatever? Why? Why do people think that yoga teachers, for whatever reason, shouldn't raise their prices? I find this mentality like fascinating. Now, I could try to project and say, okay, it's probably this because it's a group class, or oh, it's this, or blah, 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 blah. I just don't think it's fair. I don't think it's good business, right? And people lose their shit over like a $2 change. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, but most people I know that go to a yoga studio or have a favorite teacher or have a favorite place where they practice, they say things like, oh my God, I don't know what I would do without this class. This class has saved me. This class has helped me. This class is better than therapy. This class helps me to be a better mom because I come here and I get to breathe and move and like the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual. I go back home a better person. Oh my God, my body feels so much better. My back that hurt me for like 15 years, da 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 da. And I'm thinking to myself, this isn't worth 20 bucks. This isn't worth 25 bucks. Now, here's the problem. Maybe you've just been going to a shitty yoga teacher and a shitty yoga studio, so you can't do the math on why it's worth it. But if you'll go and spend 25 bucks on wine and fries and burgers and like whatever, but you think yoga teachers are charging too much, you need to check. It's a priorities thing, man. It's a priorities thing. So I have thought about this for so long, right? And I talk about it with other yoga teachers and yoga studios and stuff that I own, and I get it. There's this mentality that people who are spirituality adjacent or spiritual teachers, I mean, yoga after all, whether people like to keep it secular because it's just like big booty yoga, like I'm trying to get that yoga butt and I'm trying to get my workout in. And so it's all about the playlist and all that, right? Whatever. But yoga at its essence, yoga at its core, it is not a secular so much. It's not a religious practice, but look, it is a spiritual, I'll even give you some wiggle room, but I'll say it's a spiritual leaning practice, right? You are on the field of spirituality when you are a yoga teacher and you are practicing and teaching yoga. Now, for some reason, people think that people in the field of helping, healing, serving, like spirituality, should do things for cheap. And one of the things I have always said is I said, nowhere is it written that God wants me to be broke, that I have to be not being able to pay my bills in order to do my business. I don't think that's how it works. I don't have to be Mother Teresa who takes a vow of poverty in order to do this service, right? To offer and exchange time. And that's the other thing. People get it twisted. They're looking at it like from their point of view, which is I come to class for 60 minutes or 75 minutes or 90 minutes, but that teacher didn't just spend 75 minutes, right, on that class. There's driving to the studio. There's getting to the studio early. There's staying late. There's sweeping the floors. And if you own the studio, oh my God, it even goes bigger than that. So you think we're getting paid like $25 an hour or 20, whatever the thing is. And you're doing like, oh, but all these people are here. Like you're making all this money. It's like, yeah, you know what? We pay rent. We pay overhead. We pay for yoga insurance. We pay for our websites. We pay for our business cards. We pay for like all this stuff that you're not Canva so we can make flyers. So I'm just trying to like step back and broaden the view. But mostly the heartbeat of this episode is this. If you don't know what you're talking about, why don't you just shut the up? Look at my little mug right here. I don't even drink coffee, but my friends give me really funny mugs, right? But look at this one. This is a 4-finger mug, so it's even better. It says, "Try my new recipe." They're called they're called "Shut the fuck up" cakes, right? It's like, seriously, people. I just think the internet has become like a little bit of a wild west where people just think, well, I can just go mosey on over to somebody else's land and just say something. I can just show up and just say something. I'm like, this is not a town hall meeting. You were not invited to my page. You were not invited to share your opinion. That's not how this works. I know there's a comment section, but you don't know me. And most people don't know what they're talking about. And here's the thing. What I'm trying to get at is this. Here's the takeaway for our own practice, myself included. Myself included. Everything I say on this show, I always say it's for my ears first. It's for my ears too. The next time you are tempted to make a little sarcastic comment, to quote unquote, be a dick under the guise of, I was just joking. I was just trying to be funny. Why don't you just slow down, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, why am I really about to post this? What's coming up in me? What's getting triggered in me that I feel the need to leave this? You know, it's like going over and like pissing on somebody's front lawn, right? Or like going over and I'm just going to drop this. I'm just going to drop this piece of crap right here. And then I'm going to slink off into the shadows. It's like, really? Like if you had a sincere question, I am happy. I would have explained all this in a very calm manner. And actually, I was excited. Like at first, like, and it was funny because I said, "Sweetie, check out this comment," and then I told my best friend, "Oh my God, their responses were so great." But here's the thing: if you have a sincere question, I would be happy to explain all of this to you. But to just come over to a stranger's page and say something snarky and then like run off, like, nah, that's not that interesting to me. And one of the things I said is at first I was like, wow, like Vikki had some things to say, people. Vikki with 2Ks from Lawrence had some things to say. But then I literally just stopped and I started laughing. And I was like, oh my God, thank you so much, random lady, because you just gave me great podcast. I'm like, you just gave me a podcast episode. Because that's the thing you got to know about us storytellers and us writers. It is all material for us. Everything that kind of happens, I'm like, I am going to draw from and I'm going to use in my own creativity. So I'm actually would like to take a moment to say thank you to the random comment, not condom. No. Oh my God, the random comment lady, because you gave me good material for my podcast. So you guys, again, I did this using yoga as an example, but how many other times have you kind of been the person with your hands on your hips doing like, well, who do you think you are? When you don't know the whole story, you don't have the bigger picture. You don't know this person's reality. You don't know their background. So before we go casting stones at everybody, why don't we just slow down and take a breath and get curious about why we feel the need to, inflict ourselves? And that's one of the things that I say as a spiritual mentor. Why? Like when I talk to people in the nest, my group spiritual mentoring program, one of the things that I say why a daily DSP, right? A daily spiritual practice is so important. Because when you take time in the morning to spend time with yourself, with spirit, right? Yourself, your source with spirit, when you start to kind of get your mind right and get your mind online with love instead of fear, when you spend some time with the God of your own understanding in the morning, when you start to kind of like be more present, right? That's what I'm doing this whole month of September in the Good, Beautiful, and Holy Challenge. We get a bunch of people in there. We're having so much fun. But this challenge has been amazing because it's helping people to start their days looking for the good, the beautiful, and the holy. It's totally training their minds. And if we don't learn how to train our minds, this is what happens. A DSP could be the difference between you waking up and then going out into the world in an inspired way versus you going out into the world and inflicting yourself on other people. And the internet is famous. It is notorious for people just using it as a way to inflict their own sadness, hatred, anger, like whatever, just kind of like projectile vomiting all their shit, right? Onto others without slowing down and saying, why do I feel the need to share my opinion on this? What is coming up within me that is making me uncomfortable? Because my $25 price wasn't the problem. It's whatever that person's response was to that price and the story they wrote about it, the meaning they assigned to it, and whatever sense of lack of abundance that they had within themselves. So I am happy to have been a possible mirror for somebody, but apparently they kind of missed the point, right? Again, yoga, prayer hands. We might want to, right? If we're going to call ourselves yogis, if we're going to say that we practice yoga, we got to go beyond the asanas, people. We got to go beyond the postures. If you're going to say that you practice yoga, go pick up some books on the deeper meaning, read the sutras, find out about the yamas and the niyamas, because that's the practice. I always say, do you know how many flexible assholes I know? Just because you do the poses doesn't mean you're doing yoga. All right. That's what I'm gonna take Vikki and I'm gonna boop, 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 boop. We're gonna back her up. We're gonna put her back in her place. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for letting me share. And if anything that I said, like if you're a fellow business owner and you know what I'm talking about, and like, look, I mean, come on. I mean, people are always going to have their opinions on what they think other people should charge, and that's like fine. But like, you've never, again, if you have an experience, right? Maybe come to a class, have the experience, then afterwards you can say whether or not you think it's worth that amount. But in the meantime, like, just keep it. Hey, right? Something that I often say when I see something or read something, or even sometimes when my dogs, if I'm trying to do something and my dogs are like going ballistic, I'll very calmly just look over at them and I go, hey, I have an idea. Why don't you shut the fuck up, right? And I think this in my head sometimes about humans too. I try to look, I love everybody. I try to love everybody, but I don't always like people's behaviors, right? So all feelings, all emotions are welcome, but not all behaviors. And so coming on over to my page and just dumping something like that, that's not really, I don't sign off on a seal of approval with that, right? So thank you for listening. I hope this has been helpful. At the very least, I hope it's been entertaining. I always think I want my podcast to educate, or to either educate, enlighten, entertain, like something, right? To evoke emotion, to evoke a response, to feel like it has been helpful in some way. And sometimes it's just fun to kind of riff off of human behavior, man, because that's what I'm in the business of, right? Is helping people to see how we have all these stories and how they affect like how we show up in the world and how we are responding to what's going on in our world. And I can't control what other people do. All I can control is how I respond to it. And this felt like the way that I wanted to respond, number one, but also that I feel like if maybe I have a sense that there's somebody out there that needed to hear this. So I'm trusting STOTJ, spiritual team on the job. I'm trusting that. And if it's you, if you're the person who hears this and was like, oh my God, I needed to hear this, please do write me. Please send me a message. You can always reach me on my website. Just go to my contact page, right? It's Karen Kenney, KENNEY.com. If you're somebody who is interested in getting on my email list so that you find out my shenanigans and what I'm up to and what events or things that I'm doing, or you just want to get this podcast delivered right into your inbox every Thursday morning, you can just go to KarenKenney.com/sign up. One word. And then if you want to join the nest, You always hear me, right? I talk about my spiritual mentoring group program called The Nest. It's an ongoing program. You can join at any time. It's $50 a month. I always say, just come give it a try. And if it's for you, you will love it and you will stay. And if it's not for you, you don't have to stay. You just pay your 1 month and then you're free to leave as you want to. I'm not interested in building awkward or codependent or whatever weird things, right? If you want to be there, you're there. If you don't, you don't have to be. And then that's just going to KarenKenney.com/nest, Nest. All right, you guys, it has been a total blast. Wherever you go, may you leave the people, the place, the animals, the environment, and the social media platform better than how you first found it. Wherever you go, may you and your quality of thoughts and your quality of words and your quality of actions, may who you are showing up as and how you are being, may it be a blessing. Bye.